and welcome to our podcast where we read the Bible and discuss its religious, historical, and cultural significance. I'm your host, Andrew, along with your co-host, Stephen.
Hello there.
And in today's episode, we're going to pick up where we left off and read day 4 of the creation from the book of Genesis. And so I think we should go ahead and get started. But before we do, I'd like to mention at the end of the episode 3, I speculated on which Bible the Gideons might be using, and Stephen was looking it up, and I didn't let him answer. So we've since found out that they don't just use one version. They use many versions. They basically get their hands on whatever they can. Which versions did you say they used?
From the look of things, they've used the New American Standard Bible as the main.
That's the main one.
That's the main one. And then from about 2011, they distributed the Living Translation. Apparently, they also produce versions of the King James Version and the New King James Version.
So it's not they don't have their own version. They just use different versions that they can get and relabel it, put new cover on it.
Yeah, they probably have a contract or something with the people that are probably. I think it's the United Bible Societies. They do the New American Standard Bible and other things. So they probably have some sort of contract with that. Although it's mainly because they'll just rip out the New Testament and put the Psalms in as well.
I was going to say, because I think I remember seeing some of them where it was actually seemed like it was imprinted in the binding on the cover. So they must be getting it special printed.
Well, apparently they have a French language version called Nouvelle Edition de Genève.
I cannot believe that you're able to pronounce that so well.
I spent 2 weeks in France last summer.
Well, yeah.
I picked up quite a lot of basically how to read.
In 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I mean, I was there on 2 trips for probably a week and a half total, and I didn't pick up any of that.
How many French people did you try to speak to?
Not many. I'm American.
That's your problem.
You have to remember, I'm an American here.
Yes, you don't speak to anybody else apart from your own.
I just look confused and hand people money. And make blindingly ignorant comments.
What? Speak English, please.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I think we discussed it before, the King James Version onlyists.
Yeah.
Who don't actually use the original King James Version, but they'll say, you must use the original King James Version, but you don't use the original King James Version. Yes, we do. No, you don't. Does it have a J in it? Yes, then it's not the original.
And it's not the original. That was one of the most interesting pieces of trivia I've come on so far. So
yeah, you should always ask that. Does it have a J in it? If the answer is yes, then it is not the original.
Not the original. I don't stay in a lot of hotels these days, but now that I know, I'm gonna have to start checking. You know, whenever I go to a hotel now, I'm definitely gonna have to pull that Gideon Bible out and see exactly which one it is. That's the kind of useless app we need for our phones that will just tell you in advance.
It's funny that you say about looking at hotels, because when I was trying to find out about the Gideons, I had a funny news article come up saying, a vicar condemns hotel after it replaces Gideon Bible with 50 Shades of Grey.
I'm pretty sure that's not an official Gideon.
Oh dear. I thought you were trying to put people to sleep, not keep them awake. Anyway, so yeah. Gideon's over with. Shall we continue with what we're supposed to be doing here?
I think so. Okay. Well, we should be picking up with day 4, which looks like is verses 14 through 19, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've made you read the first 3 days, so I think I'll do this one.
Fair enough.
So you don't have to read the entire thing. And I'm not sure we're going to read every word in here, but I won't make you do all of it, so...
No worries.
Okay, here we go. Starting with Genesis 14. And God said...
Genesis 1.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And God said, let the... okay. This is why I don't read. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. That wasn't so hard.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I did go to grade school. Going back to seeing things he's done is good. After a little snafu on day 2.
Yeah, I know. After nothing good happens on day 2.
Nothing good happens on day 2, yeah. So it seems in this one he's talking about the sun and the moon. Mm-hmm. The greater light for the day and the lesser light for lesser light for the night.
I always find it funny when people ask, well, light's been made, waters have been parted, land's appeared, some plants have started to grow, and yet it's only now on day 4 that God is making the sun.
Which I could see the confusion because plants need light, so...
Yeah, and obviously you need something to create light other than the Big Bang,
right?
Especially if it's going to be shedding light to the earth. But as I may have mentioned, what he doesn't say he creates the sun on the day. He doesn't bara. Bara, as we've found, has only appeared on day 1 in the first verse. In the beginning, Bereshith bara Elohim Hashamayim ba'ef ha'aretz. In the beginning, God created bara. And yet, in verse 14, we've got, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven. Verse 16, and God made 2 great lights. The Hebrew for made is asa. And it doesn't necessarily, it can be, to make something, but never out of nothing. It's basically, it can be used to produce something, to prepare something, to attend to put it in order, to observe, or to celebrate, or to acquire. Or I think it would be able to use it as its, one of its many definitions is to appoint, ordain, or institute. So it's not God made 2 great lights. God instituted, appointed, and ordained the 2 great lights. Mainly, to rule over the day and over the night, and also to give us, as it says, to let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years. Throughout the whole of the Tanakh and the whole of Scripture, we'll specifically look at, when we get to Leviticus, the 7 feasts that are all based around months, days, seasons, and years, and how important they are. So for centuries we've used the sun and the moon to determine what we do during the day.
Yeah, and for good reasons too. I mean, it's been a pretty accurate predictor of how long the days are going to be, and not the weather, obviously, but the equinox. But so he could be saying, instead of made in the sense that we think it, he appointed or associated,
ordained and instituted
these things with these particular purposes. That makes some sense. I still think it's funny though. Maybe I know there's other versions and things are worded differently, but and then we have a colon, and then he made the stars also. Just like it's such an afterthought the way it's written. Just we have the one star, which is our sun, and then all the other billions of stars in the universe also.
Well, in my version, he made is in italics.
It's in mine too, yeah.
That means it's been added. He made is an added bit. Basically, it does actually end up with, in verse 16, yeah. And God appointed the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars.
Okay, well that certainly has a better sound to it than he also made the stars also.
I think what it should be, and the lesser light and the stars to rule the night. Basically, it's just split up the two nouns. So you've got just split up. So you've got the lesser light on one side, and then the stars on the other, and then in between it to rule the night. I think a better translation would be to say, and the lesser light and the stars to rule the night.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Because it is kind of like, oh, hang on, we've forgotten something. And the stars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, hang on, there's more things up in there.
Yeah.
When we get to the final day, we'll go back through the days, and we'll talk about some metaphorical things going on here as well in the days of creation.
Well, verse 17 certainly seems to reinforce the conversation we had before about the meaning of firmament in heaven, because it says, and God set them in the firmament of the heavens, so that really, the intuitive meaning of that would be to have heaven mean sky,
Yes,
so
sky or the universe rather than
actual heaven, whatever idea. You know, clouds and angels and harps and stuff. So, you know, I wonder if there's a Subway in heaven. You know, the sandwiches, because there's more Subway sandwich places than any other restaurant in the world, I think. So
seriously,
more than
McDonald's,
which is a little surprising. But I think it's because they opened a lot of little ones that were attached to other businesses.
It's a lot easier to do a smaller Subway than it is a smaller McDonald's.
Yeah, and so if there's no Starbucks or Subway in heaven, I mean, I would think they'd be the first. And now for something we hope you'll really like. Verse 18 just seems to be rehashing sort of what was already said.
It's kind of like a repeat. Basically, you've got.
Well, it adds the vital bit, though, that God saw it was good, though. So that's...
Yes, it does, indeed. Well, basically, you've got verse 15 and 16, and then, as you know, basically God saying, and let them be for light the firmament of the heaven, blah, 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 and then, you've got 14 and 15, and God said, let there be lights of the firmament, divide bar, and then 15, and then let the lights for the lights of the firmament, to give light upon the earth. And then you've got the answer to that, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. So basically, you've got the beginning of God saying, let this happen, and then you have the reply of, it's happened.
Well, that's part of the pattern that they have here for each day, right? I mean, it's the...
Yeah, pretty much. Because they could have just said, and God said, let there be, and then at the end of it, and it was so. They could have ended at verse 15. And let them be for light in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. End, and it was so.
The Bible might not be so big if they took out some of this stuff. I mean...
Well, it's quite poetic as well, so it's kind of a question and answer theme going on.
I'm not sure how many people appreciate that. I mean, clearly you do, and I would have not noticed it, but if I hadn't, someone else hadn't pointed it out to me, I wouldn't have independently noticed it. I'm no great literary scholar, though.
Well, neither am I, but thanks for the implication. Well, this is why it's always that you lose something in translation. I mean, this is pretty much an okay translation, but you can't really get the poetry coming through because you got because basically you've got basically every single verse is beginning with a vav. Because vehiyu, weya as, weya ten, weya shol, weya chal areb, weya mer, weya bra, weya barek, weya mer again, weya as, weya mer, weya bra. Basically, it's all. Each sentence is starting off with a way or a way, basically with a vav. It's all very poetic. There's hundreds of books going through all the different sorts of poetry going on. So depending on who the author was, I'm going to say Moshe in this case, and Moses. Basically, a lot of things are going on in Genesis 1. You've got, as far as I think, we've got scientific, quote unquote, we've got poetry, we've got metaphorical, we've got allegories, we've got loads of things that can be gleaned just from a chapter.
Yeah, it's there's a lot more to it.
I think one commentary I saw had 50 pages or more just on the first chapter of Genesis.
That reminds me of a English class I took where we had to read a poem, and it was really short. I mean, I don't remember how many words it was, but it wasn't very long, maybe 20 words. And it was about a bee. And, there was some small book written just about that poem. I couldn't understand how you could possibly have that much to say about so little words, but it's there. I mean, there's the hidden layers there. I mean, it's not all it can't all be nonsense. I mean, clearly there's something there.
You've got to take into account that there will be different Hebrew versions.
Right, yeah.
Different, because as I said, I've been going through the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're quite a bit different with extra things here and there, things missing. Oh, sorry, things omitted rather than missing on purpose or through negligence. So you really couldn't go, right, well, it works fine in this version, but when we go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, hang on, it doesn't all work again.
I wonder how many changes were made to paraphrase it so that it fit the literary style.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, basically, when it comes to Hebrew, you've got the early Hebrew Phoenician of pictographs Hebrew, And then you've got the Paleo-Hebrew, which, as far as we can tell, is probably one of the earliest written languages that had letters, rather than because obviously you had cuneiform. That's the pictographs of the
triangles.
Basically, yeah, you got the Babylonian, the Syrian old language, and basically they didn't really have an alphabet, little symbols, and then a symbol could mean like it could be a symbol could indicate God just as a whole word, or it could be the first letter of a name. And so
it's very confusing.
So there's a Syrian lexicon I was trying to get my head around because I've been reading some of the old like the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Right.
Know about that?
Yes.
I was looking at seeing if I could get some sort of Syrian or Babylonian thing for that to see if there's anything that I can glean from that. But when it comes to Hebrew, we've got Paleo-Hebrew. I think the earliest is 700 BC, 700 BCE. We've got the earliest known record of the Paleo-Hebrew, which is it's on a pot, actually, on the side of a pot, containing Deuteronomy 6 verse 4, or 6 verse 5.
We don't really do that anymore.
Whichever the Shema is. Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh. Yahweh is God, Yahweh is one. And then after their stint in Babylon, they come back with a new kind of Aramaic clone type of Hebrew, basically. But the Paleo-Hebrew has disappeared now, and it's been the letters have been replaced with their Aramaic equivalents. And that's that's basically the main Hebrew that we see and read today. They don't really have vowel Hebrew. They have what's known as vowel consonants, basically 5 letters that can indicate a vowel. So you got the ayin, you got the hey, you got the vav, you got the yod, aleph.
Is it sometimes y?
Yod, that's y.
Well, because we still have 5 now, A, E, I, O, U.
A, E, I, O, U, but then in Old English, y was the I. We didn't really use I, we used y.
Is that where the sometimes y comes from?
Yeah. You've got different spellings of pike and yacht and loads of different things.
Oh, yeah, like P-Y-K instead of...
Well, you've got to remember, the old V was a U. If you ever look in 16th century paintings when they have the person under it named, you'll see a V when we would expect a U, because the Old English V was a U.
Huh.
And not the V as we have it now, and not the U as we have it now.
And they had no U then, or did they just...
No, I think they used Y for U as well. Y was I and U.
Y was just everything.
Yeah. Well, if you go and read some of the 16th century literature, that was written in English, like if you read one of Thomas More's books, if you ever want to, in English, basically you'll find several different words spelled different ways in the exact same sentence.
Wow, that's an accomplishment.
Just because at that time English was still evolving as a language.
Yeah, but inconsistencies of the same word in the same sentence.
Yeah.
That's something.
Well, it's very odd enough. I've seen a similar thing in Hebrew when it comes to names. I was doing a transcription of a manuscript that contained text from the book of Joshua. And Joshua's name is also the same name as Jesus or Yahushua or Yeshua or whatever the hell you want to call him, basically. And in the same manuscript, it was spelt 4 different ways. His name was spelt 4 different ways, and in one it was spelt, and in one verse there was only one word between them, and there were 2 different spellings of the same name. I'm just trying to remember what the 5 vowels are. Yod, Hey, Vav. Aleph and Ayin, there we go. Aleph, Yod, He, Vav, Ayin. So they're the 5 vowels in 5 vowel consonants in Hebrew, because the He can obviously be an H, but it can also indicate an A sound at the end of the word, or an E sound, or an I sound, and obviously the Y can be an I, or it can be as a letter, it could be even an E, or a capital Y. Like in Yahweh and Yahushua and Yachazikel and Yashayah, loads of different names beginning with a Y. And obviously you got the Aleph, like in Adam, so it can be a capital A, or it can just indicate the vowel A. Same with Ayin as well. Aleph and Ayin are quite similar. And then the Vav, that can be an O or a U. Especially in Hebrew, you can have, as I mentioned before, you can have the same thing spelled the exact same way. It's like So the same Hebrew letters you can see in what's known as the roots. Basically, depending on how they're pointed with the vowels, you can have like we go with peace, shalem or shalaim. You've got the adjective of shalem, which becomes an adjective, and then you've got the adverb of shalam, and you got shalim as well, which is basically they are all in. I'm going from memory here.
Well, you don't have everything memorized?
I don't have everything memorized, oddly enough. I wish I did. But you got shin, lamed, and mem. Basically, same three letters can be vowel pointed different ways to give a verb, a noun, an adjective, an adverb, a participle. In Hebrew, it's it's an art form trying to translate half the time, because you're trying to right. Okay, is this the noun, the verb? Thankfully, how they are in the actual text is, it is quite apparent whether they're doing the verb.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I saw on your website, which, to say it again for anyone who doesn't know, is thewaytoyahweh.com, that you had gotten an anonymous letter telling you that your work was rubbish, and you had written a response, but he had no reply in his email address, so
no need to reply.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he never provided any.
No, he never provided any sort of reason for why. I like seeing when I get emails from people, but then that was like, no need to reply. Okay, and then I read the email. I was like, okay. Right, okay.
If he had replied, he would have had to have dealt with the fact he didn't really have anything to say, other than to just insult you.
And what I found, basically, he said, judging what I can be, basically showing what I can see on your website, you have no clue of how to translate Greek and Hebrew. Despite the fact I've not actually put any Hebrew translation on the website yet, so it's kind of like, well, you can't really determine that.
So which of my none have you?
Greek, and basically it was just a case of he just said all the crap, and I was like, so I posted it on the website saying, prove it. If he comes back and sees it, prove it. Show me, tell me, so I can address it and either fix it or.
Well, one of the reason why I thought that was so funny is because one of the things I really appreciate about what you do, not that I've read all the stuff that you've done, but you do put all the different versions, so a person could make up their own mind, I guess, if they wanted to. If they didn't like the one you preferred, you tend to put, here's all the different.
Yeah, basically, in the Amplified version, I put everything. Right, okay, this is what the word is, and this is all its meanings. So pick and choose which one you want to have.
So to say that you have no idea, it's like not only are you doing it, but you're giving the full selection. So, is he trying to imply that none of those options are correct, or I don't know?
No idea.
Very, very weird. I mean, it's the kind of hate mail you can get on the internet.
Yeah, it's just a case of, right, okay, this guy's got some beef with me. Obviously, I've said something that's upsetting, so it's like, all right, I'm just going to insult him.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I felt insulted. I was just like, you're not providing any proof.
But yeah, it's just a funny story on the surface about this guy who wrote you an email. But there's plenty of people who are like that. They take their beliefs very seriously, not that you shouldn't, and it can make them quite close-minded, or perhaps they're close-minded people to begin with. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of merit for his claims, or at least if he did, he didn't provide any, so
yeah.
It is just retaliation for you, probably. Maybe it was the Galatians thing, I don't know. Something you said obviously offended him, and I don't know how you exactly.
Good.
That's the.
If you were offended, you needed it. Okay.
So I don't know how do you even have a conversation with those people, because they're obviously not amenable to anything you have to say.
Yeah, no. Well, if you've ever read some of the stuff in the forums as well, I do have the sort of, basically the only way really is to just know exactly what it is you are talking about. You basically, in order to answer someone, you have to be able to know it inside and out, really, what you're going to be saying to them. Because, one slight mistake, and that can come back to bite you in the arse. Try and become an expert in what you're going to be talking to people about. basically check everything.
Well, that helps
thoroughly.
That if you do that, and I try to do the same thing, if I'm unsure, I double check. That helps you yourself personally in your personal development. But we were talking in the last episode about the King James only people, and the fact that you found it amazing that they could stick to that King James version despite all these other versions existing, including previous English translations, and they're like that, though. I'm not saying every King James onlyist is like that, but how do you ever... You get these little sects, and then just how do they even get brought into that? It's like they were obviously amenable enough to get into that little niche, but then they won't hear anything else.
Well, I think it's very much upbringing. I think it's parents. Parents, going back to basically... So I had a discussion with a King James version onlyist. He must have only been about 18, but he was absolutely adamant that the King James version was translated by Puritans.
What?
Yeah.
Puritans...
He was absolutely sure of this, that the King James version translators were Puritans.
That is so wrong. It's unbelievable.
It's so incredibly wrong.
Not only was it translated before the Puritans, but the Puritans used the Geneva Bible.
Yes, they did.
Which is not the same Bible. I don't...
Yeah, well, this is one of the weird things, but it was the fact that it was someone had told him that the King James, you could trust the King James version because it was done by Puritans, and obviously he had.
That's a special kind of stupidity, though, because that's the kind of thing where you should just be able to fact check it and realize that you're wrong. I mean, when it comes to beliefs that are that are not immediately discredited by evidence, that's one thing. Not being willing to listen to an argument for a belief, but that's just basic fact checking. I mean, that's.
Well, obviously, it wasn't just me speaking to him because it was on a forum, and several other people. Basically, we just pointed him to, counteract this idea of his, and he was like, "Oh right,
yeah."
So
he realized that he was wrong, or
he did realize he was wrong, thankfully. But it was just the initial of they were Puritans. They were Puritans that translated King James. It's like no, they're not.
I'm not sure why that would be a seal of quality, though. I mean,
I guess it depends on which cults they're from, to be honest. If they are like, Puritans are the best, blah, 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 blah.
Well, there's a lot of, maybe not Puritans, but there's certainly a lot of Founding Father worship over here in the States.
Yeah.
Which brings up issues of the Jefferson Bible, which is yet another Bible we haven't touched. Not really applicable yet, but...
No, not yet. But we will come to that, I guess. Yeah, no, we can talk about... It must be said, Andrew, your country seems to produce the weirdest of people.
Well, thank you. I don't...
There's one thing you excel at, it's making weird people. Seriously. Especially religious types. Especially religious Christian types. Because you've got the Westboro Baptist Church, haven't you?
Yeah, unfortunately.
We don't have that in England. Although we probably will have some sort.
But who boycotts your military funerals then?
Very few people would boycott military funerals here. It's not the army person's fault. Right. They're in the army.
Yeah.
So basically, it's not a case. We don't blame the army person. We don't say right. It doesn't matter what flipping religion or sexuality. It doesn't matter. It's an army. As far as I'm concerned, an army person is somebody who serves his country, whether he wants to or not. To be honest, because that's your job. And I would never boycott someone like that.
Well, you're sane, so you're not crazy.
Not. Thank you. Well, I'm a different type of crazy, but not that type of crazy.
You're not Westboro Baptist Church crazy.
No.
A much more productive crazy. Well,
crazy but productive. Well done.
Well, there's a revisionist history that goes on here, where people are always trying to make the Founding Fathers more religious than they actually were. And I do understand their motives. It's very strange, and
because wasn't Thomas Jefferson a deist?
well, a lot of them were. Maybe today we might call them an agnostic. Rarely do people call themselves deists anymore. I think those people sort of moved into agnostic territory, or the other way, and gone religious. But I can't remember meeting anyone in my life that said they were a deist and used... Yeah. Jefferson said something, the reason why we want these freedoms, and I'm paraphrasing, is because they were trying to get away from the monarchy. They didn't want decisions that other people had made in the past to affect them. And so the whole idea was they wanted you to be able to elect your leaders every so often so that the decisions they made didn't necessarily influence the future generations. They could make up their own mind. And we have all these people now in America who, what would the Founding Fathers say? They would say to make up your own goddamn mind, That was the whole point.
Use your brain.
Place. Yeah, exactly.
Use that thing between your ears.
But they're held up as this, ultimate authority figure. That what would what would Jesus do? What would Thomas Jefferson think? And then, of course, in order to get their religious arguments across, organized religious arguments across, they have to make all of them these religious figures, because that lends credibility to their authority figure.
Yeah, that's how it is. Basically, if you're trying to sell something, you want to try and make someone famous who everybody looks up to, be that sort of person that you're looking for. Because Christians will go mad when there's a famous celebrity who's a Christian. Muslims do the same thing, I think. And they use it as some sort of legitimizing of their religious beliefs. It's like, oh, look at these famous people. They become Christians. Become a Christian as well. Like, what? Why?
Yeah, exactly. What?
Why? Just because they're famous, I should start following them? Surely that's idolizing them.
Well, I don't think there's anything in the Bible about not idolizing, is there?
No, there's nothing about not idolizing someone.
I don't think there's anything. In fact, I'm pretty sure it says it encourages idolizing.
We're being sarcastic for those that haven't quite got on. If there's one thing the scripture talks about, it's not having idols.
Welcome back to our Golden Calf podcast.
We should have called it that, Andrew. The Golden Calf podcast. That would have been fantastic. But no, Golden Calf. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
we'll have to do a special a mock show.
Yeah, a mock show.
Golden Calf thing where we just
the Golden Calf.
Talk about how great and awesome false gods like Zeus and all that stuff. That'd be great. we should be very serious about it as well. This, that, and the other. I can pick up some bullshit from Greek on Hebrew or whatever.
Oh, we have to do this now. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Well, speaking of different versions, previously we have compared the King James Version with the Vulgate and the Geneva Bible. So we may as well continue that, and I'm going to read from the Geneva Bible, because I don't think you have access to a Geneva, do you, Andrew?
Not at the moment. I mean, I could probably find an electronic one, but you know what? I'll follow what you're reading with my King James Version, so I can spot the differences.
Okay.
And, we'll do it that way.
Well, we've got one of our favourite ones very soon, but here we go. Okay. So this is Genesis 1...
14.
Sorry, this is Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to 19. In the Geneva Bible of 1599. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God then made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made also the stars. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven, to shine upon the earth, and to rule in the day and in the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
There's almost no difference. I mean, it's very similar.
We've got our favourite separate and divide thing.
Yeah, that's
as we've learned previously. And here I am. Here's the Vulgate. Dixit autem desfant luminum infirminatur celi un dividant diem ac notem et sint insignia et tempora et dias et annos. So basically, dividant
is divided.
So we've got separate and divide. We've got slight different change word order instead of he made the stars also in the King James version.
He also made,
he made also the stars.
Moved the word also around.
Also, it's just been moved a little bit.
Yeah, it's
rather than putting and God and this and
it's
that. Then so the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
I really appreciate that about the Geneva version. It's a little bit more readable, but it's a little more palatable to have it broken up like that and not always have and.
Well, basically, previous to the Geneva, there was the Great Bible of 1539, which was actually the royally stamped, approved translation.
Well, it didn't think much of itself, did it? The Great Bible,
no,
really?
The Great Bible, that's what it's called. That, in fact, was a plagiarism. But anyway, and it was more called the Great Bible due to its size. I do plan one day on going through all kind of like the old versions of the English, to see what differences there are between the words. Because as we've seen from the King James version, from the Geneva, there's very little difference whatsoever. So it's just a case of how far back do they go.
It is funny, though, that the differences do seem to be taken from the Vulgate. Which I think for you even that was a revelation when we first discovered it.
Well, what I hadn't remembered or hadn't remembered was basically the King James version translators, quote unquote,
divinely inspired
plagiarizers. They actually.
Hey, that's divine plagiarism.
Divine plagiarism. Excellent. They actually took as their base text the Bishop's Bible of 1572. Now, this was another state-run kind of monarchy-type Bible from the newly established Church of England, but most of them were still mini-Catholics. They were basically all that happened between the Church of England and the Roman Catholics was that the monarch became the new pope. That was it. Basically, everything else stayed the same, more or less. The only good thing about it is that things were now done in English rather than in Latin.
Well, Henry VIII needed a divorce. We can't
and then ended up murdering the woman he wanted to get a divorce for. Anyway, but, psychotic monarchies aside, here's what the Bishop's Bible of 1572 says. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, that they may divide the day and the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, that they may give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, a greater light to rule the day, and a lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to shine upon the earth, and to rule the day and the night, and to make difference between the light and the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
So it seems they were taken from the Vulgate then, too.
The Bishop's Bible was based on the Vulgate.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense then. So when the King James was put together, the contributions from the Vulgate really came in through the Bishop's Bible, not...
Actually, it came through Bishop's Bible, but the King James, they, on their title page, as we've read before, my version from 1825 is the Holy Bible containing the Old and New Testaments translated out of the original tongues and with the former translations diligently compared and revised. Basically, as we can see, they've not really done any translation.
Yeah.
Nothing here in the King James version is very new. Especially, I was reading the Bishop's Bible earlier, and I was like, this is nigh on word for word the King James version, and it is, isn't it? It is more or less nigh on word for word.
I remember you had said before that 85% was basically Tyndale, so...
that was for the New Testament.
Just for the New Testament. Sorry.
Basically, unfortunately, William he did manage to translate some of the Old Testament books, specifically Jonah, and I think 1 and 2 Kings. However, what he actually translated has been muddled because we don't actually know what he managed to get through translating. Because unfortunately, he was murdered in 1535 by Brussels Catholics.
Yeah, I wonder if he received a message by carrier pigeon that said your translations are no good.
Yeah.
Do not send return carrier pigeon.
Well, he pretty much did. After the original 1525 version of his New Testament, Bishop Wolsey publicly burned one of Tyndale's New Testament Bibles, saying basically he said there's 20,000 errors in this Bible.
I'm guessing he didn't count them all, but
no, it was a anti-Protestant Catholic bishop going, you know what? You're not having this in English. anyone found with this Bible written in English is going to get burnt.
Well, if they could read it themselves, they wouldn't need the church as much.
Well, that's exactly what happened, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. We're all still Catholics, right? I mean...
No. I'd rather be dead than a Catholic. Let's put it that way. No offense to any Catholics, but you're scum. Right. Basically, William Tyndale is one of my heroes. He's the first man to translate the New Testament from Greek into English at a time when English was still evolving, still didn't have any major structure to it, and he gave it the structure. Thanks to his New Testament, the English that we speak now is all thanks to William Tyndale. As brave as he was, he knew what he was doing was going against everything that the world was at the time. Thankfully, he did manage to find a safe haven in Switzerland for a while, until he was eventually caught and then strangled and then burnt.
I feel like he and Galileo might have gotten along.
Yes! However, William Tyndale wasn't a friend of the Pope, so he got off less lightly. But yeah, no. I know a lot about William Tyndale. So unfortunately, we don't really know how much of the Old Testament William Tyndale managed to translate, or how much of it eventually was plagiarized for other versions. That's why I want to try and find the Great Bible somewhere, because it makes a lot more sense because it looks like the Geneva is definitely translating from a non-Latin source with the use of separate rather than divide.
Right.
Of a firmament. That depends on what the Hebrew at the time knew. It might have just because obviously Hebrew at the time would have been based on what the Latin Vulgate translated it as.
You know what I really love though? Even though you've got this one branch that comes from the Latin, and you've got another branch that didn't, you got these multiple branches where you have iterations that could be traced back to a common one.
Common one, yeah.
All of them could be used to show that evolution is definitely wrong.
But yeah, it is very much like an evolution, isn't it? It's just taking the old and slightly changing it here and there. Because obviously you've got the evolution of language, that evolves. But the evolution of the Bible, how much can you plagiarize and get away with it?
Well, the King James people tried. They
managed to succeed. They managed to succeed.
It was divine plagiarism, though.
Oh yeah. Trying to compare the Geneva and the bishops and the King James version. Day from the night. Yeah, they've taken that from. Basically, the King James looks like a very much mishmash of Geneva and bishops. Because in the bishops you've got to divide that they may divide the day and the night, whereas in Geneva you've got to separate the day from the night, and then you've got the King James version which says to divide the day from the night. So it's kind of like, okay, we'll keep the divide bit,
yeah,
like that, but everything else will be Geneva. So we like that because it's Latin. We like the Latin.
But I wonder though, what I'd like to know is, I know you said you wanted to try and get your hands on the Great Bible. So the Bishop Bible does have those Latin roots, and the Geneva one didn't, and it looks like the King James was the amalgamation of the two. But how much farther back? I mean, I guess at some point you stop at the Vulgate with the Bishop's Bible. You said the Bishop's Bible was based on the Vulgate. But where...
the Bishop's Bible, basically, it was essentially the Great Bible, but compared with the Vulgate, so they changed quite a few... I think they changed quite a few things. As I said, I'd need to get a hand on the Great Bible.
To actually see.
To actually see what's going on, because obviously you've got... Because between the Great Bible and the Bishop's Bible, you have the Geneva Bible that popped up. And obviously that had a few things in it that obviously
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What are the
kings and such.
origins of the Geneva? Because it doesn't have those Latin words in it, so...
It has a few. It's got firmaments, but it isn't using, like, divided
Right.
and whatnot. The Geneva, as from the title, it was done in Geneva. But again, the Geneva was essentially the Geneva was essentially the Great Bible again, but updated.
So what's the history of the Great Bible, then?
The history of the Great Bible is actually known as Matthew Coverdale's Bible as well, which is actually a pseudonym for Michael something or other, who was a personal friend of William Tyndale.
Okay.
And one of the great things about the Great Bible is the New Testament is entirely William Tyndale. Basically, 4 years after William Tyndale was murdered, his New Testament got official royal stamp from the King of England.
That's how it usually goes, though.
Yeah.
Your work isn't really appreciated until after you die.
Until after you've been murdered.
Yeah, murdered. Not just die. You gotta get murdered.
Yeah, you gotta get murdered first, and then you'll find.
The more brutally you were killed, the more people will respect your work when you're dead.
So yeah, basically, obviously Matthew Coverdale was kind of hunted by, the Catholic authorities as well, but managed to get away. Unfortunately, William Tyndale let his guard down with a guy called Henry Phillips, who eventually betrayed it. Henry Phillips was the Catholic. We don't actually know who sent Henry Phillips, but basically they think either the Bishop of London or Cardinal Wolsey, or quite a lot of people, and I would agree, say Thomas More. Because if you don't know anything about the issue of Thomas More, basically Thomas More and William Tyndale locked horns in writing. So much so that Thomas More spent 500,000 words combating William Tyndale's extra scriptural writings. He wrote a lot more he did more than just translate. He wrote The Obedience of a Christian Man, which I'm currently reading. He wrote several commentaries on 1 John and on Jonah. So he did quite a lot of other things, but Thomas More hated him so much. Thomas More was in the Tower of London. He was still allowed to move around. He could still have whatever visitor he wanted. But Cardinal Wolsey, who's the other guy who could have possibly sent Henry Phillips, basically by this time he was pretty much dying and was, sent off somewhere. So he really didn't have either the inclination or the power to get someone to go and do it. But Thomas More, being free in the Tower of London, so he could send Henry Phillips with the low hope, basically gives Henry Phillips a whole load of money, going, go and find William Tyndale, gain his trust, and then betray him. And that's eventually what happened. The one and only time William Tyndale let his guard down.
It was someone who was planning to betray him.
Yeah. Basically, Henry Phillips had masqueraded as a Protestant.
It's almost like a script for a movie or something.
Yeah, it would. Well, but yeah, the one time William Tyndale lets his guard down, and it gets.
They should make an action thriller out of that.
Well, they actually have done. It's called God's Outlaw. I wouldn't call it an action thriller, though. It's just basically a historical drama starring Richard Lee, I think.
I'll have to watch that then.
Not to be confused with the God's Outlaw band, by the way. Oh, Roger Rees. There we go. Roger Rees. Have you ever seen Robin Hood Men in Tights?
Yes.
The Sheriff of Rottingham plays William Tyndale.
Tights.
Tights. Oh, apparently there's a John Wycliffe one as well.
Coming this summer to the Superdome. God's Outlaw and the Golden Calf.
Yeah, there's another one. I'm definitely going to be watching John Wycliffe, the Morning Star.
Sounds like a reggae singer.
John Wycliffe. Well, he was the first man to translate out of Latin into English.
Oh, straight from Latin to English.
Oh, straight from... Yeah, obviously, unfortunately, when he was doing it, they didn't really have much access to a Greek version. But William Tyndale did, to Erasmus Didymus, whatever the hell his last name is, and his Textus Receptus, or Greek New Testament.
You just got so many languages here. You got Hebrew, you got Greek, you got Latin, you got English, you got translations between, Hebrew and Greek and Latin, and Hebrew and Latin and English, and
Greek and English, and
Greek and
Hebrew
English, and
just all going all over the place. Well, lots of things have happened over the years when it comes to this sort of stuff.
I'm still amazed at how unexplored the Dead Sea Scrolls are, because...
Well, because no one's really had quick or easy access to them.
Is that deliberate, do you think, or is it just incidental?
I don't think it is. I think it's because there's so... I really don't know, because obviously I've read the Dead Sea Scrolls Deception. Basically, they've hidden it away because it completely goes against the origins of Christianity. They really don't, if you read them. But it's just a case of because they're so large, there's so many, and they're still finding them even now. More than 60 years later, things are still popping up. And obviously because very few people read Hebrew.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Okay, if I sent you a Dead Sea Scrolls manuscript,
I would have no idea.
Where would you start?
It would look like I would. Yeah, I guess I could say it would look Greek to me, but.
So basically, when it comes to it, there's not much that the layperson with no knowledge of Hebrew or Greek or what I've been telling you about is going to be able to do much. Basically, they need help, essentially, and that's why I'm putting free transcriptions of the Dead Sea Scrolls up online. I'm not that far from finishing, actually. I'm finishing off the 22nd Isaiah manuscript, 4Q57C, or 4Q Isaiah C. That'll be the last of the 22 Isaiah manuscripts found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that'll be every single thing you ever would need to see about Isaiah from the Dead Sea Scrolls online. Then obviously after that I will be doing a translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscripts, and then after that I'll be doing an amplified translation of the Tanakh. I actually did some rearranging on my website. You were the first person to actually hear me say this, Andrew. I did some rearranging on my online thing the other day. The translation now, rather than having an introduction in version 1, version 2, version 3, and the extra stuff, I've got Renewed Covenant on the New Testament, so I've stuck them all in one. But now I have Ancient Papyrus, Apocrypha, Septuagint, and Tanakh. Obviously, the Septuagint will have, as I've got here, it'll be a translation of the Greek Tanakh books, transcriptions of the underlying Greek texts, and then a reconstruction of the original Hebrew underlying the Septuagint. So I'm going to look at the translation of the Septuagint from the Hebrew and also compare it with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then I'll be able to reverse engineer what was probably the underlying text.
That's amazing.
So the Septuagint. And then after that, I'll do a Septuagint Greek and English interlinear to help people, and then also do a parallel Greek and Hebrew of the Septuagint. And then for the Tanakh, obviously I'll have Dead Sea Scrolls. So I've got the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'll have the translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'll have Hebrew English interlinears of all the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscripts. I will have, as I said, translations of the Tanakh books, and then I'll have the transcription of the underlying Hebrew text of the translations that I'll do. And then obviously I'll have a Hebrew English interlinear of that as well. So yeah, a few more things to start doing.
Just a few,
Just a few. I'm a busy bee. I get bored. I need something else to do. It's like, you know what? It's like when I start getting near the end of something, I'm like, I need to start doing something else.
Need something else. Well, it sounds like there's plenty more to do for as long as you want to keep doing it.
Look at it. It's till I die for the looks of things.
Yeah. Well, which is harder, the transcribing or the translating?
The transcribing at the moment, because it's looking at images, it's trying to find images, it's typing on the keyboard as well. That's quite fun. Hebrew typing with an English keyboard is quite fun. Well, that's my plans for, I'd say, the future, the continuing present.
For the foreseeable future,
for the foreseeable future,
the next few weeks anyway.
Yeah. Well, I've still got version 2 and 3 of my Renewed Covenant translation to sort out. Yeah, I've not even done them, but I need to go through and revise my version 1 Renewed Covenant translation before I even think about doing version 2 and version 3. Thankfully, with version 2 and version 3, it's just version 1 minus.
Have you thought about getting some of these things published eventually, like on paper?
On paper, I have, but it would be quite expensive.
Well, not if you can convince a publisher to do it.
No, I don't. To be honest, I much prefer just sticking everything online for free. As far as I'm concerned, Andrew, everything that I'm doing should be free. It has definitely crossed my mind several times. It's just a case
really more of a way for someone to get a hard copy and support you.
Well, I do it for free. I will never ever ask anyone to ever send me any money. As far as I'm concerned, everything should be free. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to scriptural matters, whilst I will go out and buy books by scholars, I'd much rather they just put them for free online. As far as I'm concerned, if it's important, it should be free.
Yeah, definitely.
It should be no holds barred. It should be right. If this is important, and you want people to start having understanding and start discussing it, then put it online for free. You know, I read an awful lot of stuff online. I have an awful lot of people that come through to the website and download and read for free. It's just like, why would I waste time having just a printed copy? I'm not having like
I would never suggest only having a printed copy.
Oh yeah, no.
I just meant additionally have print. Yeah.
It's definitely something for the future, Andrew. It's definitely something to think about. But yeah, obviously there are online things, as you said, where you go and you send them a thing and then they print it out and everything. But yeah, well, that's the comparisons between the versions. I don't think there's much else we need to say. Basically, It's the fourth day. Basically, the two great lights, the sun and the moon, haven't been created on day 4. They've been brought forth and then basically appointed and ordained to rule the seasons. Yeah. Ordained, I like that word.
Chief Minister of Lighting Services.
Minister of Lighting Service. In and out of hours.
Yeah. Also, General Manager of the Heaven branch of Subway. Eat fresh.
Yeah. And as we get, and at the end, we have the usual, and the evening and the morning with the fourth day, as we've discussed before, that would be more better translated. And there was chaos and there was order. That was the fourth day.
All right, well, thanks for listening, and we're glad you joined us. If you enjoyed it, feel free to look at our previous episodes, and stay tuned for episode 5, where we will take on day 5. Thank you, and have a nice day. We'd like to thank SacJoe22 for releasing her version of A Prayer under the Creative Commons 3.0 license, which allowed us to use it in our podcast. If you'd like to find more music by SacJoe22, visit ccmixter.org/files/SacJoe, SACKJO22/36192. And for more information about the Creative Commons 3.0 license, visit creativecommons.org/licenses/by-nc/3.0. Thank you.